In a quiet corner of the galaxy, Captain Caleb Calrider's old and battered ship, the Pale Horse, is mocked by smug traders and proud captains. They see only a rusty, broken-down freighter, not knowing it hides secrets and power feared across the stars. When a deadly and silent enemy fleet threatens to destroy their home station, only the Pale Horse and its tired captain stand a chance to stop them. This story is full of tension, fear, and hope, as a forgotten warrior faces impossible odds to protect the weak and prove that strength is not always in the brightest armor but in the scars of survival. The Drunken Neutron was a bar that smelled the same everywhere: stale air, spilled ale, and tired machines. Captain Caleb Calrider sat alone in a worn booth, his fingers wrapped around a glass of amber liquid. He wasn't drinking, just watching the light twist through the cheap glass. A small tremor in his left hand, a habit he couldn't shake, slowed as he focused on the fading drink. Across the room, loud laughter filled the air. Captain Borleth, a proud Tibran, boomed with a voice full of false confidence. His ship, the Stellar Wind, gleamed like a star in the dim station. "It's an insult," Borleth said, pointing to the dock. "That junker over there, the Pale Horse. A disgrace to starship design. Exposed wires and patched plates. It's a cosmic tetanus trap." His friends laughed and joined in the mockery. One human pilot with a smug grin added, "I heard rumors about ghost ships out past the Tardius Veil. Called one Cain's Folly. Sounds like superstitious nonsense." Cal's eyes stayed fixed on the glass. The bar's warmth and noise washed over him, but inside, a cold weariness settled. He had heard these jokes 100 times before, in 100 different bars. To the smug traders of Port Anank, the galaxy was a place of polished ships and smooth success. But the Pale Horse was no beauty queen. Her hull was a patchwork of mismatched plates, some freshly welded, others scarred from battles Cal wished he could forget. The exposed power conduits were crude battlefield fixes from forgotten fights half a galaxy away. To the locals, the Pale Horse was junk. To others, she was a legend. The Reaper of the Ashen Stars. Cain's Folly. Names whispered in fear in places no one in this bar dared visit. But here, it was just an ugly, tired ship. And Cal was just her tired captain. The laughter grew louder. But then, the bar doors hissed open. Silence swallowed the noise like a black hole. 6 figures stood in the doorway, clad in dark armor, faces hard and without humor. They were the Vulture crew, feared mercenaries who answered only to danger and death. Their leader, Scorn, stepped forward. A massive figure with 4 unblinking eyes and skin the color of dried blood. The bartender's smile vanished. Borleth and his friends fell silent, their bravado draining away under the weight of the mercenaries' gaze. Every patron shrank into themselves, eyes glued to the floor. Scorn's eyes scanned the room and then fixed on the ship docked outside. His confidence faltered. His broad shoulders slumped. A primal fear showed in his 4 eyes, a fear that spread quickly to his crew. His lieutenant whispered urgently about the Pale Horse. Scorn stared at the ugly ship, his expression unreadable for a long moment. Then, his voice, low and rough, cut through the silence. "Who is the captain of that ship?" The bartender, trembling, pointed toward Cal. Borleth, confused, tried to laugh it off. "It's just a relic. An antique." But Scorn ignored him. Slowly, carefully, he walked toward Cal's booth, moving like he approached a live bomb. Cal didn't flinch. His face showed no surprise, only the exhaustion of a man who had faced this moment before. Scorn stopped a respectful distance away, eyes shifting between Cal and the Pale Horse. "It can't be," he breathed. "The Reaper of the Ashen Stars. Cain's Folly." The names hung in the air like a dark prayer. The bar held its breath. Borletha's mouth hung open. The stories he had mocked were true. Scorn nodded once, sharply. A gesture of respect, fear, and awe. He stepped back and left, followed by his crew. The silence remained, thick, heavy, full of shock. Borleth was the first to break it. His confidence gone, he approached Cal. "Captain, my apologies. I was wrong. I did not know." Cal looked at him with tired eyes. "Your opinion of my ship does not trouble me. But whatever scares them," he said, nodding toward the door, "that scares me too." Cal drained his glass and stood. He tossed credits on the table and headed for the exit, a cold knot tightening in his stomach. Trouble was coming. He knew it by the old scars on his soul. Outside the bar, Scorn waited, flanked by his crew. His face was grim, urgent. "Ryder. We need to talk." Cal crossed his arms. "I'm not looking for work. Or trouble. This isn't work. It's a warning. The trouble is already here. The Silent Fleet is coming." Cal's breath caught. The Silent Fleet was a ghost story, a nomadic armada of destruction that stripped worlds bare. They did not negotiate. They erased. Scorn explained what his scouts had found just beyond the veil. The Silent Fleet was near. They'd be here within a day. "I thought you were their herald," Scorn admitted, eyes darkening with fear. "But your chaos is personal. Theirs is industrial." Cal's gaze narrowed. "Why warn me? Your kind usually runs." "We've seen what they do," Scorn said, hope flickering in his voice. "They've never faced you. You're the only one who's ever broken a fleet. If Cal stayed, they would fight with him. If he ran, they would try to escape." Cal stared at the mercenary leader. The peaceful bubble of Port Anank was about to burst in violence. He sighed and said, "I need to talk to my ship." At the port, panic spread. The station administrator scrambled to call an emergency meeting. The captains and guildmasters argued and blamed. Their ships were pretty but useless. The Silent Fleet was coming for them all. But in the midst of chaos, Cal Ryder and the Pale Horse became a whisper of hope. The bridge of the Pale Horse was unlike any other ship's command center in Port Anank. It was rough and simple, more like the inside of an old submarine than a starship. Metal walls were bare, marked with hand-painted warnings and faded blueprints. The air smelled of hot metal, burnt circuits, and stale coffee. In the center sat Cal's worn leather chair, patched with tape and showing years of use. Nearby hung an old brass ship's bell, green with age, a relic from another time. Cal sank into the chair, the leather groaning softly under his weight. He strapped himself in without thinking, movements carved into muscle memory by decades of command. The little tremor in his hand disappeared here, in this space, where everything was known, measured, and controlled. "Banshee," he said quietly. The ship's AI, a calm, melodic voice, answered instantly. "I have been monitoring the station's comms, Captain. The dominant tone is panic, a chorus of fear." Cal's eyes flicked to the screen showing sensor data beyond the station. "They should be scared. Their ships are pretty, but fragile. The Silent Fleet doesn't care about pretty." Banshee's voice softened with artistic critique. "Their defenses sing a simple song of commerce and pride. The Silent Fleet sings a louder song, a song of destruction." Cal tapped commands on the panel, pulling up the schematics of the Pale Horse's most special system, the displacement drive. It was a dangerous, unstable technology that allowed the ship to bend space itself, moving by tearing tiny holes through reality. "They're about to hear a new tune," Cal muttered. "A fugue in C minor with plasma beats," Banshee added, almost with delight. "Our signature duet." Cal checked the helium-3 fuel reserves, low, but just enough for a few short jumps. Each jump took a heavy toll on the ship and on him. The drive was expensive in every way. "Not yet," he said, leaning back. "Let them sweat longer. Salvation comes at a price." The price was steep. Later, at the docking ramp, the station administrator, Lurik, and Captain Borleth stood before Cal, begging for help. They promised credits, favors, anything. Cal listened quietly, arms crossed. Then he named his price. "Every gram of refined helium, 3 from your vaults," he said flatly. "Full salvage rights to whatever is left of the Silent Fleet after I'm done." Lurik's jaw dropped. "That's everything. We'll be crippled." Cal shrugged. "Better crippled than dead. My ship runs on helium, 3 in spite. The dance I do is costly. The final note, catastrophically expensive." His words hung heavy in the air, an unspoken threat. Borleth surprised everyone. "Pay him. Whatever he asks." Lurik looked at Cal's steady face, then at Borleth's desperate eyes. He nodded slowly. Back on the dock, the heavy fuel lines snaked to the Pale Horse's intake ports. The station's power dimmed, giving its energy to the ship. Cal was no longer an outcast. He was their predator, protector, and expensive savior. Outside, space was quiet. Suddenly, the Silent Fleet arrived, not with a roar but with a chilling silence. One moment, nothing but stars. The next, dozens of warships dropped from faster-than-light travel in perfect, terrifying sync. Their dark hulls, shaped like wedges, moved with cold purpose. Only the red glow of their weapon ports betrayed their presence. Port-Anank scrambled to defend itself. A handful of patrol cutters, small and weak, formed a shield line. Captain Borleth and his beautiful stellar wind joined them, a desperate act of courage. The fight was over before it began. Plasma bolts and kinetic slugs tore through the defenders. Borleth watched in horror as his ship's shields flared bright green, then failed. His elegant vessel was torn apart by a plasma strike that vented atmosphere and flame into space. Around him, the rest of the line vanished, destroyed in moments. The wolves had broken through the sheep. Only then did the Pale Horse leave the dock. Its patched and battered hull looked small and fragile against the dark starfield. On the bridge of the Silent Fleet's lead destroyer, the commander sneered at the freighter's image. "A museum piece," he said. "Obsolete by centuries. Shields barely a joke." His tactical officer agreed, contempt clear. "Target the derelict," the commander ordered. "Begin consumption." But inside the Pale Horse, Cal prepared for battle. There was no sensation of speed, only a gut-twisting tear as space itself bent around the ship. The stars vanished. The brass bell rang with a sharp clang that vibrated through the bones. Suddenly, the Pale Horse was gone. It blinked back behind the lead destroyer, so close it nearly scraped the enemy's engine block. For 2 seconds, the ship was vulnerable, then it fired. Plasma cannons and kinetic weapons slammed into the destroyer's weak points. The enemy ship exploded in a silent flash, leaving a spreading cloud of debris. Before the shockwave could reach other ships, the Pale Horse vanished again. The bell rang once more. Cal's focus was absolute. Sweat rolled down his forehead, but he did not move more than needed. Each jump drained him. Each jump risked everything. Too slow, he growled as the enemy tried to track their pre-jump signature. "Banshee, a staggered waltz, 3/4 time. Make it pretty." "The geometry is elegant," Banshee replied. Preparing sheet music. The Pale Horse danced. Blink, fire, vanish. Clang. Blink, fire, vanish. Each jump was a sharp, twisting ballet through space and time. The Silent Fleet tried to fight, but their rigid tactics could not keep up. They scrambled and faltered, losing ships to an enemy that appeared and disappeared like a ghost. Borleth, on his crippled bridge, watched in disbelief as his screen filled with red icons disappearing into explosions. From the back of the enemy fleet, a massive dreadnought advanced, jamming communications and sensors with a powerful field. But Cal saw the enemy's mistake. "Their countermeasure is a gift," he said calmly. "They are deafening themselves." Cal plotted a final, dangerous jump, a strike directly above the dreadnought's command tower, bypassing its massive shield. Drive core at 98% thermal capacity, Banshee warned. This jump may cause structural damage. No one builds a legend by playing safe, Cal said, slamming the activation key. Space tore again. The bell screamed a tortured clang. The pale horse appeared above the dreadnought, close enough to fill the enemy's view. Instead of a blast, the ship fired a gravitational lance, a beam that crushed space itself. The command tower imploded silently, crushed into an infinitely dense point. The dreadnought's heart folded in on itself. The source of the jamming field was gone. Stunned silence fell. Then chaos exploded. The silent fleet broke, fleeing in panic. The tide of destruction was stopped, and turned back. The pale horse floated slowly back toward Port-Ananke. Its engines were quiet. The weapon ports cold. The brass bell on the bridge had a thin crack now, faint but telling. The ship looked even uglier, scarred with dark burn marks from nearby explosions. It carried the weight of a battle fought against impossible odds. Inside the drunken neutron, the bar was silent. The patrons and surviving captains, including a bandaged Borleth, watched the station's main display in stunned disbelief. The starfield where the silent fleet had been was now empty, save for drifting wreckage. Ships lay broken, like shattered jewels against the black. In the center of the wreckage floated the pale horse. The freighter once mocked as a rusty heap was now the ghost that haunted a broken fleet. The Reaper. Cain's folly. The pale horse. The laughter and insults felt like distant memories. The ugly ship was now a legend. Cal Ryder stood on the docking ramp, watching the last of the helium-3 fuel flow into the ship's tanks. The station's lights flickered dimmer, now running on emergency power. He had bled them dry, just as he promised. Administrator Lurik watched from a distance, his face a mix of gratitude and horror at the cost. Cal turned and passed Captain Borleth, who was no longer wrapped in bandages but still carried the weight of defeat. The Tibran gave no words, language felt useless now. Instead, he stood tall and lifted a glass in a silent, respectful toast. Cal nodded slightly in return, a quiet understanding between two captains who had faced the abyss. He climbed the ramp and boarded the pale horse. The bridge was dim, the bell's crack faintly echoing as the ship powered up. Cal settled into the chair and began the final checks. Outside, the debris of the silent fleet drifted in silence. The station was saved, but the danger was far from over. The silent fleet was only a part of a larger threat, a nomadic armada of destruction that moved like a plague across the galaxy. Cal knew this fight was only the beginning. Back in the drunken neutron, voices slowly returned, cautious and low. The once proud captains and merchants whispered Cal's name in awe and fear. The man with the junk ship who had shattered the silent fleet. The mockery was gone. In its place was respect, and a new fear. Port-Ananke was no longer a safe haven. The shadow of war had fallen. Cal stared out from his ship's viewport, the cold void of space stretching before him. The scars on his ship were deep, and so were the scars inside him. But he was not finished. A message came through the comm system. It was from Scorn and the Vulture crew. "We have seen what you did. We will stand with you." Cal nodded. Allies were few, but they were coming. The pale horse lifted from the dock, slow and steady. It moved out into the cold starfield, the station lights fading behind it. Without warning, the ship vanished with a blink and a faint clang only Cal could hear. A ghost in the dark, a legend reborn. The fight for the galaxy had only just begun. The galaxy beyond Port-Ananke was a cold, dangerous place. The silent fleet's defeat was only a spark in a much darker storm. Captain Cal Ryder knew the true enemy still lurked in the shadows, an endless armada, moving like a shadow across the stars. Their machines were ruthless, unfeeling, and driven only by hunger and destruction. The pale horse slipped through space like a phantom. The ship's scars seemed to tell stories of battles past, but the real fight was ahead. Cal sat on the bridge, eyes fixed on the star charts. His hands moved automatically over the worn controls, plotting courses through the twisting currents of stellar debris and radiation fields. The Vulture crew had joined him, a small band of hardened fighters willing to risk everything against the coming storm. Their leader, Scorn, stood quietly behind Cal, his 4 eyes scanning sensor readouts. The mercenary's usual fierce bravado was replaced with a rare and cautious respect. Cal spoke softly. "We have the element of surprise. They think we are weak. We'll use that." Banshee's calm voice filled the cabin. "The enemy fleet is massive, Captain. Their forces number in the thousands. Our ammunition and fuel are limited. We must choose our battles wisely." Cal nodded. "We don't fight to win every battle. We fight to survive long enough to strike back." Suddenly, alarms blared. The ship shook. "Incoming sensor readings," Banshee announced. "Enemy scouts detected. Fast-moving frigates closing in." Cal's grip tightened on the console. "Ready the displacement drive. We'll dance again." The pale horse vanished in a ripple of space and time. The sudden silence after the tearing clang of the ship's bell was deafening. Then they reappeared behind a squadron of enemy frigates, firing plasma torpedoes that crippled their shields. In seconds, the enemy ships were wreckage floating in space. But the victory was short-lived. The Silent Fleet's command vessels reacted swiftly, sending reinforcements to cut off Cal's escape. The dreadnoughts moved like massive shadows, blocking paths and jamming sensors. Cal's eyes flicked to the fuel gauge. 2 jumps left. Scorn's voice broke the tension. "We can't keep running. They will trap us." Cal's face was hard. "No. We don't run. We make them chase shadows." Using every trick and system aboard the Pale Horse, Cal pushed the ship to its limits. The displacement drive screamed, tearing through space and time with violent force. The ship blinked and vanished, then appeared again to strike. The Silent Fleet's formations grew confused and broken, but their numbers were overwhelming. One by one, the Vulture cruise ships were destroyed, their black armor scarred and shattered. Scorn lost several good men, each loss burning into his soul. Cal felt the weight of leadership, the heavy burden of every life depending on him. Then, from the dark reaches of space, an unexpected ally arrived. A convoy of ships, sleek and fast, with weapons and shields unfamiliar to Cal. They bore the marks of an ancient and secretive faction known as the Star Wardens, guardians who had long watched over the galaxy's balance. The Star Wardens offered aid, bringing supplies, repairs, and reinforcements. They shared intelligence about the Silent Fleet's weaknesses and strategies. With their help, Cal's small force gained new hope. But the cost was high. The Pale Horse was running low on helium-3 fuel, and the ship's systems groaned under the strain. Cal stared at the fuel gauge. 1 jump left. 1 chance to turn the tide. Banshee's voice was steady but grave. "Captain, the final jump will push the displacement drive beyond safety limits. Damage is likely." Cal closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them with fierce determination. No risk, no victory. He set coordinates for the Silent Fleet's main supply base, a heavily guarded station that kept their armada fueled and ready. If Cal could destroy that, the Silent Fleet's advance would slow, buying time for the galaxy to prepare. As the Pale Horse made the final jump, reality tore again, and the ship disappeared into the void. Cal braced himself for the shock, the scream of metal, and the ringing of the ancient brass bell. Then, silence. The starfield reappeared, but this time the Pale Horse was inside the enemy's heart. The Pale Horse drifted deep inside the enemy's supply base. The station was a vast fortress of dark metal and harsh lights, crowded with fuel tanks, weapon depots, and endless corridors. It was the heart of the Silent Fleet's power, the place where their war machine was fed and repaired. Cal Ryder sat rigid in his worn leather chair. Every nerve in his body was sharp with tension. The helium-3 fuel in the tanks was nearly gone. The displacement drive was screaming warnings of overload. One wrong move could mean the end. Banshee's voice was calm but urgent. "Captain, the base defenses are activating. We have minutes before we're detected." Cal nodded. "Then we make them regret waking us." The ship slipped through the shadows, hiding behind bulkheads and energy fields. Sensors lit up with enemy patrols and automated turrets scanning for intruders. Cal and Scorn led the small force with precision. The Starwarden's reinforcements joined in, hacking systems and disabling defenses. It was a dangerous dance of chaos and order. The Pale Horse moved toward the core, massive fuel reserves and command consoles pulsing with cold energy. Cal felt the weight of the moment, the chance to cripple the Silent Fleet forever. But as they approached the heart, an explosion rocked the station. The Silent Fleet's commander, a cold and ruthless being, had anticipated the attack. The station's gravity field shifted violently, throwing ships off course. Energy beams lanced through space, tearing apart allies and enemies alike. Cal's ship rocked hard, alarms screaming. Systems began to fail. "Banshee, prioritize shields and emergency power," Cal ordered. The commander's voice came over the comm, cold and merciless. "You are fools to think you can stop us. The Silent Fleet will consume this galaxy. You cannot win." Cal gritted his teeth. "We already have." With a final surge, the Pale Horse fired its gravitational lance into the station's core. The weapon's strange energy ripped through metal and stone, collapsing fuel tanks and command centers into a deadly implosion. The station shuddered, then exploded in a silent wave of destruction that tore through the surrounding fleet. Ships exploded, systems failed, and the Silent Fleet's advance stalled. Cal felt the last of the fuel burning, the ship's systems failing one by one. The displacement drive flickered and died. The Pale Horse was drifting, helpless, but the battle was won. Back at Port Anank, the survivors cheered, the shadow of fear lifting for the first time in months. Captain Borleth approached Cal's ship. His face was tired but respectful. "You saved us all," he said quietly. Cal shook his head. "We all saved ourselves. Together." As the Pale Horse slowly powered down, the ancient bell on the bridge let out one final, cracked clang. Cal looked out at the stars, feeling the weight of 1,000 battles behind him, and a galaxy's hope ahead. The legend of the Pale Horse, the Reaper of the Ashen Stars, and its captain, Caleb Cal Ryder, was born, not from glory or wealth, but from scars, stubbornness, and the fierce will to survive. And in the vast, dark silence of space, sometimes that was enough to change everything.